Ethan Ward had been lost in deep space for 3 days. His small shuttle drifted like a broken leaf in a dark ocean. The engines were dead, the lights flickered, and the oxygen warning beeped every few minutes. He tried to stay calm, but fear sat in his chest like a heavy stone. He had sent distress signals again and again, but no ship answered. No human, no alien patrol, nothing. Just silence and the feeling that something unseen watched him from the dark void outside his windows. Ethan closed his eyes, thinking this might be his last night alive. Then he heard something strange. A soft sound, like music, floating through the radio channel. At first he thought it was his mind playing tricks, but the signal grew stronger. There were voices, laughter, and something like chanting. It was not mechanical, not static, not random. It sounded almost like a celebration. Ethan sat up straight, hope rushing into him like fresh air. He tapped the control panel and traced the signal direction. It came from a point in space where no map showed anything. No stations, no colonies, no ships, nothing at all. But the signal was real, warm, and alive. Ethan decided he had no other choice. He used the last bit of power to turn his shuttle toward the strange sound. As he moved closer, the darkness slowly opened to reveal a shape. A massive glowing structure floated in the void. It looked like a palace made of crystals and living energy. The walls shimmered like liquid stars. Soft blue and purple lights moved across its surface like breathing skin. Ethan stared in shock. He had never seen anything like it in all his travels. The music grew louder as he approached. The voices became clear. They were singing in a language he had never heard, but the tone felt ancient and ceremonial. It almost felt holy. The shuttle docked by itself, guided by invisible energy. Ethan wasn't sure if he was being welcomed or captured. But he needed oxygen, food, and any help he could get. He stepped out of the shuttle into a long hallway of glowing walls. The air felt warm, clean, and smelled like fresh flowers mixed with something metallic. The music echoed from deeper inside, calling him forward. Ethan walked slowly, his heart pounding. Part of him wanted to run back into the shuttle. But something about the sound pulled him like gravity. At the end of the hallway, a giant door opened on its own. Light spilled out, bright and golden. Ethan raised a hand to shield his eyes, then stepped inside. His breath caught in his throat. He had walked into a huge hall filled with hundreds of tall alien beings dressed in elegant clothes. Their skin glowed softly, their eyes shone like jewels, and their movements were smooth like dancing water. The hall was decorated with floating lights and silver banners. A long carpet made of shimmering particles led to a platform where 2 aliens stood holding hands. Ethan froze when he understood what he had found. It was a wedding. The music stopped. Every alien turned to look at him. The room went silent, thick and heavy. Ethan felt like he had just stepped on a sacred ritual. He lifted his hands slowly, trying not to look threatening. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean to interrupt." But the aliens only stared. Some looked shocked, some confused, and some angry. One alien with gold markings on his face stepped forward. He looked like a leader or maybe the father of the bride. He asked Ethan something in their language, but Ethan did not understand. The leader's expression tightened as guards moved closer. Ethan felt cold fear climb up his spine. Before the guards reached him, the lights in the hall flickered. A soft wind swept across the room. It was strange, there should be no wind in a sealed palace floating in space. The guests turned their heads to one dark corner of the hall. Ethan followed their gaze and saw a figure standing half in shadow. A woman, or at least she looked like one. Tall, graceful, wearing dark silver clothing that shimmered like smoke. Her eyes glowed bright silver, and she had long fangs that shimmered under the lights. Every alien in the hall stepped away from her. Even the guards froze. Ethan could feel the power around her, cold and ancient. She smiled slowly, as if she had been waiting for this moment. She walked toward Ethan, each step soft but commanding. Her presence made the air colder. Ethan's breath turned into white mist in front of him. But he could not move. He felt trapped by her gaze. When she finally stood in front of him, she leaned close. Her voice was soft, calm, and filled with something dangerous. "Welcome, human," she whispered. "I have waited a very long time for you." Ethan's heart began to race. He had no idea who she was or what she wanted. But the aliens looked terrified of her. And she looked hungry for him. Not like food, but like destiny. She reached out her hand, her cold fingers brushing his skin. At that touch, the palace floor lit up with ancient symbols beneath Ethan's feet. The guests gasped in fear. The bride and groom backed away. The leader shouted something in panic. Ethan looked down as the symbols glowed brighter and brighter. Something old, powerful, and dangerous had awakened the moment he arrived. The vampire woman's smile widened. "Your arrival," she whispered, "has changed everything." And Ethan realized he was not a lost traveler anymore. He had stepped into a prophecy older than human history. And the vampire woman did not plan to let him leave. Ethan stood frozen as the strange symbols glowed under his boots. Soft golden lines circled around him, forming shapes he could not understand. The hall was silent, except for the crackling energy rising from the floor. Every alien in the room stepped back from him as if he carried a deadly disease. Ethan did not know what the symbols meant, but the fear in their eyes told him enough. Whatever awakened here was not normal. Not safe. Not meant for humans. The vampire woman stood closest to him. Her silver eyes watched the symbols with calm interest. She looked amused, almost pleased. Like everything happening was exactly what she wanted. Ethan felt cold breath on his neck as she leaned closer. "Do not be afraid," she whispered. "You were always meant to stand in this circle." He stepped back, but the symbols followed him like living light. "What is happening to me?" he asked, his voice shaking. "I don't belong here, I shouldn't be at your wedding." The woman smiled in a slow, dangerous way. "This is no ordinary wedding," she replied. "And you are not here by mistake." The bride suddenly shouted something in her language. Her voice cracked with fear. She pointed at Ethan, at the glowing ground, and then at the vampire woman. The groom pulled her protectively behind him. The leader with the gold markings stepped forward, his hands trembling. He shouted at the vampire woman, but she did not look at him. Her eyes remained locked on Ethan like nothing else mattered in the whole hall. The guards rushed toward Ethan again. But the woman flicked her fingers gently. A wave of cold wind exploded outward. The guards flew back as if hit by an invisible force, crashing into walls and tables. The crowd gasped and stepped further away, knowing they could not fight her. Ethan stared in horror. "What are you?" he whispered. The woman tilted her head slightly. "A friend," she said softly. "If you choose to be." The symbols under Ethan grew brighter. The floor vibrated as if something below the palace was waking up. The walls flickered, and the floating lights turned dark purple. The wedding guests whispered among themselves in pure panic. Some ran toward the doors, but the doors sealed shut with a loud echo. No one could leave. Not even Ethan. The leader shouted at the vampire woman again, his voice breaking. She finally turned toward him, bored and annoyed. "You knew this day would come," she said. "You all knew the prophecy." Her voice was soft, but each word hit the air like thunder. "The human who enters the circle marks the return of the Nightborn." Ethan felt his heart race faster. "Nightborn," he repeated. The woman smiled at hearing the word from him. "Yes," she whispered. "My people." Ethan swallowed hard. "So you're a vampire." She laughed gently, the sound cold but strangely calming. If that human word helps you understand, yes. But I am more than that. The lights flickered again, and the symbols began expanding. The glowing lines crawled outward like roots spreading across the floor. The alien's panic grew louder. The bride cried into her hands. The groom held her tightly and yelled that Ethan must be removed. But the vampire woman raised her hand, and silence fell again. She stepped even closer to Ethan. He could feel her cold breath on his cheek. "You must listen," she whispered. "You followed the signal, yes." Ethan nodded slowly. "I thought it was a distress call." "No," she said. "It was an invitation." Ethan felt the air thicken around him. An icy breeze brushed past his neck. The symbols under his feet stopped growing and began spinning instead. Like a wheel of light turning faster and faster. Ethan tried to step out of the circle, but he couldn't. Something held him in place like invisible hands gripping his legs. "I can't move," he said in fear. "You are not meant to," the vampire woman whispered gently. The aliens screamed as the palace started shaking. Cracks of purple light ran up the crystal walls. The banners fell from the ceiling, and lights hummed loudly. Several guests dropped to their knees, praying or pleading. This was not just a wedding anymore. This was the beginning of something ancient. Something dangerous. Something tied directly to Ethan. The vampire woman placed her hand on Ethan's chest. Her touch was ice cold, but strangely calming. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. "The energy around you." Ethan nodded slowly, unable to lie. "I feel something moving." "Good," she whispered. "That means the prophecy accepts you." Ethan stared at her in confusion. "What prophecy?" She smiled faintly. "The prophecy that a human will unlock the gate of shadows. And bind with a Nightborn." Bind. The word echoed in Ethan's mind like a heavy bell. "What does bind mean?" he asked. Her silver eyes glowed with hunger and warmth at the same time. "It means you are not a visitor here. It means you belong to me." Ethan's heart dropped. He opened his mouth to speak, but the palace shook again. A loud crack thundered from below. The symbols erupted with bright light. The aliens screamed in fear. The vampire woman smiled in victory. And Ethan realized he had stepped into a destiny he did not understand. A destiny he could not escape. Not anymore. The hall kept shaking as the glowing symbols around Ethan spun faster. The wedding guests screamed and held onto each other while the crystal pillars cracked with bright purple lines. No one knew if the palace was breaking apart or changing shape. But everyone knew one thing. The center of all this chaos was Ethan. The vampire woman stayed perfectly calm as the storm of energy swirled around them. Her silver eyes never left Ethan's face. She watched him like she was studying something precious. Something rare. Something only she had the right to touch. Ethan's legs shook as he tried to step back. But the invisible force holding him in the circle only tightened. "I can't move," he whispered again, his voice weak. The vampire woman nodded slowly. "You are not meant to run. Not from me." A cold breath wrapped around Ethan's neck. Like the air itself was alive and watching him. The symbols under him shifted again. This time forming a glowing shape that looked like an eye. It opened slowly, shining with purple fire. The guests gasped in terror. Some fell to their knees. Some tried to break open the sealed door. The bride cried louder. "This is the Nightborn mark," one alien shouted. "He carries the mark," another screamed. Ethan looked down, confused and terrified. "What does it mean?" he asked. But no one answered. Except her. The vampire woman reached out and touched the glowing eye symbol. Her hand passed through the light like it was water. "This is the mark of my people," she whispered. "A mark that only accepts one in a million hearts." Her fingers slid up Ethan's arm, cold enough to make him shiver. And it has chosen you. Ethan shook his head fast. No, I didn't choose anything. I just came here for help. She smiled softly. Fate chooses before you understand. And fate brought you to me. The leader of the wedding party stepped forward suddenly. His voice shaking with rage. You cannot take him, he shouted at her. He is not Nightborn, he is not part of our bond. The vampire woman turned her head slowly. Her silver eyes narrowed in irritation. He is more Nightborn than you know, she said calmly. And you will not touch him. Her voice echoed like thunder. The lights above flickered and burst. Shards of glowing crystal rained down. The aliens ducked and covered their heads. But not a single piece touched Ethan. The shards curved away from him like invisible shields protected him. Ethan stared in shock. What is happening to me? The vampire woman walked a circle around him, her steps silent. You are awakening, she whispered. Your blood remembers the call. And the call answers you. Ethan didn't understand a single word of that. But he knew one thing. Something inside him felt different. A strange pull in his chest. A cold fire spreading through his veins like a sleeping part of him was waking for the first time. The bride screamed at the vampire woman. You will destroy us all, she cried. You know what the mark means. The vampire woman nodded with a calm smile. Yes. It means he is mine. The hall erupted again with gasps and shouts. The groom shouted angrily. You promised never to return, Nightborn. You swore never to bind again. Her expression darkened for a moment. Old pain flickered behind her silver eyes. Then she turned to Ethan. All promises change when fate sends the right soul. Ethan swallowed hard as she stepped closer. Her hand slowly reached toward his face. He tried to pull away, but he couldn't. The mark's energy held him still. Please, Ethan whispered. Tell me what you want from me. She gently touched his cheek with the back of her cold fingers. Her voice dropped to a soft whisper. I want what destiny wrote. I want what I lost long ago. I want my partner. Ethan's heart pounded. No, he whispered. I'm human. I don't belong in your world. She leaned so close their faces were inches apart. But the mark says otherwise, she whispered. And the mark never lies. Suddenly the glowing eye under Ethan shot a beam of light upward. It wrapped around his chest like a swirling ribbon. The light burned through his clothes and touched his skin. Ethan screamed as cold fire carved a symbol onto his chest. The vampire woman smiled in satisfaction. It is done, she whispered. The leader of the aliens stepped forward with shaking hands. You have cursed him, he shouted. No, she replied calmly. I have awakened him. Ethan looked down and saw a new mark glowing on his skin. The same eye symbol. Burning soft purple light. It pulsed like a heartbeat. His heartbeat. He covered it with trembling hands. What did you do to me? She stepped close, her cold fingers lifting his chin gently. I gave you what fate wanted, she whispered. A connection to me. Ethan shook with panic. You marked me. You're telling me I'm bound to you now. Her smile widened, cold and beautiful. Not bound yet, she whispered. But close. The hall suddenly fell silent as the palace trembled once more. Deep below them, something roared. Not a beast. Not a machine. Something ancient, powerful, and hungry. The vampire woman turned toward the sound. Her smile faded, replaced by cold seriousness. They are waking, she whispered. They smell the mark. Ethan stared at her in terror. Who is waking? She slowly took his hand in hers. The Nightborn army, she whispered. And they are coming for you. The roar from beneath the palace shook the entire hall again. The crystal floor vibrated under Ethan's feet as the glowing eye symbol pulsed like a heartbeat. He pressed his hand to his chest, feeling the cold mark burning softly under his skin. He didn't understand what was waking. He didn't understand why they were coming for him. But he knew one thing. Nothing about this place was safe anymore. The wedding guests rushed toward the sealed doors again. Some pounded on the walls with glowing tools. Some cried. Some prayed in their alien language. But nothing opened. The palace held them all inside like a prison. The vampire woman kept her grip on Ethan's hand. Her eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the purple light from the floor. She spoke softly, but her voice cut through the panic like a blade. They rise because they sense the mark. They rise because they sense you. Ethan shook his head in terror. I didn't ask for any mark. I didn't ask for any of this. She stepped closer, calm and sure. Destiny does not wait for your permission. Another thunderous roar shook the hall, louder this time. Dust fell from the crystal ceiling. The glowing banners twisted like something invisible pulled them. The ground beneath Ethan shook so strongly that he nearly fell. The vampire woman caught him with one hand. Her touch was cold, but her grip was strong as iron. You must stay steady, she whispered. What is waking below is older than this palace. The leader of the aliens shouted at her again, voice cracking with fear. You brought this curse, he screamed. The Nightborn should have stayed buried. The vampire woman's calm expression darkened. You buried them out of fear, she said. Fear of a power you did not understand. Ethan's breath came fast. He felt the faint cold energy from the mark spreading slowly through his chest and arms. He didn't want it. He didn't want any connection to the Nightborn. But the energy felt alive, and it followed his heartbeat like a shadow following light. Please, Ethan whispered. What do they want with me? She looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Then she spoke in a voice soft enough that only he could hear. They will want to take you, she whispered. Or destroy you. Depending on how they read the mark. Ethan felt cold sweat on his forehead. Why would they want me, he asked. I'm just a human. Her eyes softened slightly. A human chosen by the mark is not just anything. Another roar came from below, but this time, something else followed. A faint, rhythmic pounding. Like giant footsteps slowly rising toward the hall. The floor lit up with purple cracks stretching from the walls toward the center. The guests screamed and ran in every direction. The groom shielded the bride as a crack opened near them, glowing with violet fire. Ethan stared in pure horror. What is that sound? She answered without blinking. The Nightborn soldiers. The ones your mark woke from their eternal sleep. Ethan's voice shook. Why me? She finally turned her full attention back to Ethan, stepping so close he could hear her cold breath. Because you are the key, she whispered. And the key decides who the Nightborn will follow. Ethan felt the world spin around him. Follow, he repeated. As in, obey. Yes, she replied softly. Or kill. The pounding grew louder. The palace floor trembled harder. A deep crack surged across the center of the hall and stopped right at Ethan's feet. The eye symbol under him flashed like a lightning strike. The energy surged up through his legs and into his chest. He gasped and fell to one knee. Cold fire raced through his heart like liquid ice. The vampire woman grabbed him and held him steady. Do not fight it, she whispered sharply. If you fight the mark, it will tear you apart. Ethan's hands shook violently. It hurts, he whispered. It feels like something inside me is breaking. No, she corrected softly. It is opening. The leader of the aliens stepped forward with glowing staff in hand. He pointed it at Ethan. We must stop him, he shouted. If the Nightborn reach this hall with him awakened, this entire region will fall. The groom yelled in agreement, raising his own weapon. The mark must be destroyed. Before they could move, the vampire woman placed herself between Ethan and the armed aliens. Her voice was calm but deadly. "Touch him," she said. "And you will not leave this hall alive." Her shadow stretched behind her, long and sharp like claws. The lights flickered as her power grew colder and heavier. She looked less like a woman and more like a queen of darkness. Ethan felt the cold force around her like a frozen wind pressing against his skin. The pounding from below stopped suddenly. The hall went silent. Too silent. Like the palace was holding its breath. Then, a whisper rose from beneath the floor. A soft, ancient voice that echoed like thousands of whispers layered together. A voice so deep it made Ethan's bones vibrate. "The key has awakened." The bride screamed and collapsed into her groom's arms. Several guests fell to the ground, covering their ears. The leader dropped his staff in fear. Even the vampire woman stiffened for a moment. Her eyes widening faintly. "They speak," she whispered. "They rarely speak." The voice rose again, louder. "The key belongs to the Nightborn." Ethan's heart raced so fast he couldn't breathe. He gripped his chest. "I don't belong to anyone," he whispered. But the mark on his chest pulsed in answer. A soft purple glow rising through his shirt like a heartbeat of light. The vampire woman placed her hand over his mark. Her touch cold but steady. "Yes," she whispered softly, almost tenderly. "You belong." The floor beneath them cracked open with a thunderous blast. Purple fire erupted upward. And from the darkness below, a massive figure began to rise toward Ethan. A giant Nightborn soldier made of shadows and glowing bones. Its silver eyes locked onto Ethan like prey. Its voice shook the palace. "Key." The vampire woman stepped in front of Ethan. Her eyes burning bright. Her fangs sharp. Her voice cold with ancient anger. "He is mine," she whispered. "And you will not touch him." The giant Nightborn soldier rose fully from the crack in the floor. Its body was made of shifting shadows wrapped around glowing bones. Its eyes burned bright silver, just like the vampire woman's eyes. Except colder. Hungrier. Its head nearly touched the crystal ceiling. Every step it took shook the hall like thunder rolling across a dead world. The wedding guests screamed and scattered in fear. Some crawled behind broken tables. Some clung to pillars that were already cracking. Even the leader stepped back, trembling uncontrollably. No one dared to stand in the open except two beings. The giant Nightborn soldier. And the vampire woman in front of Ethan. The soldier pointed one long shadow claw at Ethan. Its voice shook like 1,000 old souls speaking at once. "Key. Come." Ethan felt the mark on his chest pulse hard. The purple light spread through his veins like cold lightning. His legs shook so badly he almost collapsed. "I can't," he whispered. His voice barely a breath. "I don't want to go with it." The vampire woman placed her hand on his chest again. Her cold touch steadied him. Her silver eyes locked with his. "You will not go," she whispered. "Not while I stand." The Nightborn soldier's shadow claws extended. Dark smoke curled from its fingers like poison. It stepped forward again. The crystal floor cracked under its weight. Every impact echoed through Ethan's bones. The vampire woman took a step forward too. Her expression calm but deadly. Her shadow stretched across the floor, twisting into sharp lines like blades. Her voice was soft but filled with ancient authority. "You do not command him. You do not command the mark." The giant soldier lowered its head. For a moment the hall fell silent. Then the soldier roared so loudly the walls trembled. "The key is not yours. The vampire woman's power exploded outward. A wave of freezing air rushed through the hall. Lights shattered, sending bright shards spinning into the dark. The shadows around her grew taller, sharper. She looked like a queen carved out of night itself. Ethan stared at her, breath shaking. He knew she was dangerous. But seeing her now, seeing her stand in front of a monster to protect him, he felt something new. A strange trust. A connection he could not understand yet. The Nightborn soldier lunged forward, moving faster than its giant body should allow. The ground shook with every step. It reached for Ethan with a massive claw. Ethan froze in terror, unable to even scream. But the vampire woman moved like a shadow in the wind. She appeared between Ethan and the claw in an instant. Her hand shot out, catching the giant shadow claw with one palm. The hall filled with crackling energy as her cold power clashed with the soldier's dark heat. A shockwave blasted outward, sending tables and guests flying. Ethan shielded his face. The air burned with purple sparks. But the vampire woman didn't move an inch. She stood like an unbreakable wall between him and the giant creature. The soldier growled, pushing its weight against her. She whispered calmly. "You are old, but I am older." The ground split open beneath them. More purple light poured out. Voices rose from below, countless voices whispering Ethan's name. Ethan clutched his head, trying to block the noise. "Why are they calling me?" he shouted. The vampire woman did not look back. "They feel the mark," she said. "They know the key has awakened." The soldier suddenly pulled back its claw and roared again. This time shadows shot from its mouth like a storm. A wave of black smoke raced toward Ethan. He instinctively raised his arms, but he knew it was useless. The vampire woman snapped her fingers. A barrier of silver light erupted in front of Ethan. The shadows hit the barrier with a loud crack. The air shimmered like hot metal. The ground shook harder. The barrier began to crack. "Move back," she whispered sharply. Ethan tried, but the mark's energy kept him rooted to the floor. "I can't," he said, panicked. "I'm stuck." She gritted her teeth, her voice suddenly rougher. "The mark is still claiming you." She grabbed his wrist. Cold energy surged from her fingers into his skin. The mark pulsed violently. Like it was fighting her. "I need more time," she whispered. "He is too awake too fast." The soldier attacked again, slamming both claws into the silver barrier. This time the barrier shattered like glass. Pieces of silver light scattered across the hall like broken stars. Ethan's heart dropped. He was completely exposed. The soldier roared in triumph. Its massive claws raised to strike Ethan down. Time slowed. Ethan saw the claws descending toward him. He felt the cold burn in his chest. He felt the mark spreading energy through him. And beneath the fear, a strange instinct awakened. His hand rose on its own. Purple light gathered in his palm. The same light as the mark. A thin beam shot out from his hand. It hit the soldier directly in the chest. The giant creature stumbled backward with a thunderous crash. The hall shook as it fell to one knee. Ethan stared at his hand in shock. I did that." The vampire woman's eyes widened, not with fear, but with a deep, fierce pride. "Yes," she whispered. "You are awakening faster than any key before you." The soldier roared in pain and rage. It rose again, ready to strike with doubled fury. But the vampire woman stepped beside Ethan. Cold mist swirling around her fingers. "Stay behind me," she whispered. "This is only the first." Ethan felt his blood freeze. "The first," he repeated. She nodded slowly, her silver eyes glowing brighter than ever. "More soldiers," she whispered. "Many more. And all of them are coming for you." The Nightborn soldier rose again. Its enormous shadow body shook with anger. Purple fire poured from the cracks in its chest where Ethan's blast had hit. The entire hall trembled as the creature roared. Its voice rocked the crystal walls and sent ripples across the glowing floor. Behind it, more cracks opened. Thin streams of purple smoke leaked out. Whispers crawled through the air like cold fingers brushing every ear in the hall. Hundreds of voices. Thousands. All chanting one word. Key. Ethan felt his heartbeat hammering in his chest. His knees trembled. His breath came fast and broken. He was terrified beyond anything he had ever felt. But he could not run. He could not hide. The mark kept him locked to the center of the hall like a living anchor. The vampire woman moved in front of him again. Her cold mist wrapped around her hands like silver flames. She stood tall and calm. But Ethan could sense tension in her voice when she spoke. This is not good. The first Nightborn soldier pointed at Ethan with one long shadow claw. Key. Lead. Ethan shook his head rapidly. I'm not leading anything. I don't even understand what I am. The vampire woman grabbed his chin gently and turned his face toward hers. Her silver eyes glowed brighter than ever. You are more than you think, she whispered. You awakened the mark without dying. That alone makes you rare. Ethan swallowed hard. What does the Nightborn want from me? She held his gaze without blinking. They want a king. And the mark says that king is you. Ethan froze where he stood. The word king hit him like a punch. He felt the room tilt. He felt his breath stop. I can't be that, he whispered. I'm just a normal human. She shook her head slowly. No human chosen by the mark is normal. Not in any age. The ground shook again as 3 more cracks ripped open near the center. Tall shadow figures began rising. Their bodies twisted, bony, and glowing with ancient silver fire. The guests screamed again and collapsed to their knees. The leader shouted orders. Guards tried to run but shadows grabbed their legs like living chains. The entire wedding fell into chaos and terror. Ethan felt the cold power in his chest grow stronger. The mark pulsed faster. Brighter. Like it was answering the soldiers rising below. The vampire woman grabbed his wrist. You must choose now, she whispered sharply. Either you stand with me, or you fall to them. Ethan pulled his hand back, confused and overwhelmed. Stand with you, he repeated breathlessly. What does that even mean? Her voice softened. It means accepting my bond. It means accepting your place beside me. Ethan stepped back, heart racing. You want me to bind to you? Her silver eyes glowed softly. Yes, she whispered. It is the only way you survive this. Before Ethan could respond, a massive shadow hand burst from the crack behind them. It slammed into the floor, shaking the entire hall. 2 more Nightborn soldiers rose, towering and terrifying. All of them stared at Ethan with hungry silver eyes. The first soldier pointed at the vampire woman and growled. Night Queen. Move. She leaned forward slightly, her cold smile returning. Make me. The soldiers roared together. Their combined voices shook the ceiling until thousands of tiny star-shaped crystals fell. The palace felt like it was collapsing under the pressure of their power. Ethan stumbled. He couldn't breathe. His vision blurred. He felt the mark inside him pulsing too fast. Too bright. Too wild. He grabbed his chest as pain cut through him like ice shards. What's happening to me? He gasped. She rushed to him and held his shoulders. Her voice sharp and urgent now. The mark is calling for its bond. If you don't choose soon, it will tear you apart. Ethan's vision doubled. Everything felt distant. The world shook and spun around him. He heard voices whispering his name in every corner of his mind. Key. 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 The vampire woman pressed her forehead to his. Her cold breath mixed with his warm breath. Her voice was a whisper of fear and power. You must choose. Choose me or choose death. Ethan stared into her silver eyes. He felt something deep inside him shift. Not fear. Not confusion. Something else. A strange connection pulling him toward her. A pull he didn't understand. A pull he couldn't deny. But before he could speak, the ground split open completely behind them. Dozens of Nightborn soldiers rose from the darkness. Their eyes glowing like cold moons. Their voices echoing like thunder across a dead valley. The key shall lead us. Ethan felt the mark pulse violently. His body shook as purple fire wrapped around him like chains. He screamed as the energy ripped through him. The vampire woman grabbed him tightly. Her arms wrapped around him like cold steel. Ethan, she whispered. Look at me. He tried. His eyes were blurry. His heartbeat sounded like drums in his ears. His body felt like it was splitting apart. He felt the mark pulling him toward the Nightborn army. But he felt her pulling him the other way. Cold, steady, ancient. Like a shadow offering shelter from a burning world. Her voice broke gently. Choose me. And I will protect you. I will show you who you are. I will stand with you against them all. The Nightborn soldiers roared again. Choose. 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 Ethan's knees buckled. He fell into her arms. His hand trembling as it lifted toward her. The mark glowed brighter. 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 He pressed his hand against her chest. Right where her heart should be. Her eyes widened slightly. Cold mist rose around them both. The air froze. The soldiers paused. The palace fell silent. Ethan whispered through shaking lips. I choose. The mark erupted with blinding purple light. The Nightborn soldiers roared in fury. The palace cracked like breaking ice. And Ethan's voice vanished in the explosion of light.